stop. Before we dive into this heartbreaking tale, tell us in the comments, what Spanish-speaking city are you watching us from? And don't forget to hit that subscribe button, give this video a like, and share your thoughts. Your engagement helps us share more powerful stories. Click the like button right now. The Tycoon's Secret, a slap that unleashed freedom. Charles Vance had everything anyone could dream of. A fortune built through years of relentless ambition. A powerful tech corporation that bore his name. A sprawling mansion in the exclusive Upper East Side of New York City. And a wife who, to the outside world, was the perfect picture of elegance, sweetness, and devotion. Audrey. From the outside, their life was flawless. But what people didn't know was that behind those luxurious facades and dinners with power brokers was a man obsessed with control. Audrey, his wife, had loved him with all her heart since they were young. She had supported him every step of his way to success. But over time, that love crumbled like a sandcastle against the tide. At first, it was just his tone of voice, that way of making her feel that everything she said was wrong. Then came the control disguised as care, the manipulation, the decisions he made for both of them without consulting her. And finally, the contempt. Sometimes he didn't even bother to hide it. He no longer saw her as a partner. He treated her like another object in his display case of achievements. The most painful part was that Audrey knew that wasn't love. It wasn't the love she deserved. They had a son, Leo. A 7-year-old boy with unstoppable energy. Intelligent. Sensitive. With the most expressive eyes in the world. He was the only thing that kept Audrey going. But even he was starting to notice that something was wrong in their home. "Mommy, why doesn't Daddy laugh with you like before?" he asked one afternoon. Audrey was speechless. She tenderly ruffled his hair and smiled. But inside, she felt something break. "Sometimes grown-ups have difficult days, my love, but I am always happy to have you by my side." And it was true. Leo was her reason to keep waking up every morning. Outwardly, Charles continued to play the role of the ideal husband. Dinners at fancy restaurants. Expensive flowers when he remembered. Gifts for Leo. Vacations in costly places like the Hamptons. But all of that was just a smokescreen. Audrey lived with constant anxiety. She felt trapped, like living in a golden cage. She couldn't talk to anyone. She had lost touch with her friends, with her family. Charles had made sure to isolate her, little by little. Always with convincing excuses, with that sweet voice he used when he wanted to get his way. One night, after putting Leo to bed, Audrey sat alone on the balcony. The wind was cold, but she didn't move. She watched the city lights as if waiting for a sign. And then, she felt something in her stomach. It wasn't physical. It was more of a certainty. She was pregnant. Just a few days before, she had secretly taken a test. And now, with certainty in her mind, the fear was stronger than the joy. How would she tell Charles? What would he do? Would he use it as an excuse to manipulate her further? Or would he be annoyed? She didn't even know which reaction scared her more. She heard the front door slam shut. Charles had arrived. As always, without greeting her, he took off his coat, poured himself an expensive scotch, and sank into his armchair. Audrey entered, walking cautiously. "Is Leo asleep?" he asked without looking at her. "Yes," she replied. Charles nodded in silence. Before, when he came home, he would come to her, embrace her, make her feel special. But that was ancient history. "Charles, we need to talk." He barely turned his face, raising an eyebrow. "About what?" Audrey swallowed. Her hands were shaking, but she couldn't stay silent anymore. "About us. About how we've changed. I'm pregnant. Silence. Charles set his glass down sharply on the table. Pregnant? And you just blurted out like that? Now! He let out a dry laugh, devoid of any joy. How convenient. Just when I'm trying to close one of the most important contracts of my life, you come up with this. Very timely. Audrey felt a sharp pain in her chest. This isn't just about your work. It's our life, our family. I can't keep feeling invisible. Charles stood up with that intimidating glare. Invisible? I've given you everything, Audrey. You live in a house that many women dream of. You wear clothes others can't even see in a catalog. And you come here to tell me I don't value you? I don't want clothes or trips, she replied, barely holding back tears. I want respect. I want to feel heard. I want Leo to grow up in a healthy home. Charles took another step, closer now. His voice turned colder. Don't start with your dramas. I don't have time for this. If you want respect, start by not questioning me in front of anyone. And stop making me look bad with that long face. Understood? And without waiting for an answer, he turned around, grabbed his phone, and locked himself in his study. Audrey was left standing in the middle of the room, trembling. She hugged herself, sat down slowly, and placed her hands on her belly. It wasn't just her anymore. She couldn't keep enduring everything out of habit or fear. It was no longer about survival. It was about protecting her children. Leo, the baby just starting to grow inside her. What she didn't know was that the breaking point was closer than she imagined. 2. A silent scream and the evidence. After that night, things only got worse. Charles started speaking to her even less. And when he did, it was with that dry tone, full of reproach and frustration. Audrey tried to convince herself that it was just a rough patch, that maybe it was stress from work, from business, from everything. But deep down, she knew that the man she shared a roof with was no longer the same person. In the massive Upper East Side house, Audrey walked as if on glass. Every step she took, every word she uttered had to be measured so as not to provoke his anger. She felt like a shadow in her own life. Even Leo began to notice it more. One day, while she was sitting in the garden watching him play with his ball, the boy approached, frowning. "Mommy, why are you always sad?" Audrey felt her soul shrink. She tried to smile but couldn't. "I'm not sad, my love. Just tired. Daddy doesn't love you anymore, does he?" The words hit her heart directly. "Leo, don't say that." "But it's true. He's always angry at you. He yells at you. Sometimes he doesn't even look at you when you talk. I see it." Audrey didn't know how to respond. She knelt and hugged him tightly. "I don't want you to worry about that, my darling. I'm here to take care of you. Always." But as she hugged him, she promised herself she wouldn't allow her son to grow up thinking that kind of relationship was normal. She wouldn't allow Leo to believe that love was fear. That same evening, Charles came home earlier than usual. Audrey was in the kitchen, preparing dinner. She heard the front door slam. She knew immediately that something was wrong. Charles stormed into the dining room, frowning, phone in hand. "Do you have any idea the trouble you're causing?" Audrey looked at him, confused. "What are you talking about?" He threw the phone onto the table, furious. "At the gala the other day, someone overheard us arguing. Do you realize? Now there are rumors. They're saying I'm an abuser, that I'm losing control. This could destroy me." She blinked, incredulous. "Is that all you care about? Your reputation? Don't you care that Leo hears your shouting? That he's afraid when you come home?" Charles ran a hand over his face, exasperated. "You don't understand anything, Audrey. I work every day, non-stop, to give you this life. And what do I get in return? Tears, drama. You get loneliness and a growing distance," she said softly. "But you don't want to see it." Charles clenched his teeth, and for a moment, Audrey thought he would yell at her. But instead, he turned away, muttering, "I don't have time for your nonsense," and locked himself in his study again. Leo, who had been in the living room with his game console, appeared in the kitchen, crestfallen. "Daddy's angry again." Audrey knelt and hugged him. "Your father has a lot on his mind, but that's no excuse. This is not your fault at all." Leo looked down. "I don't like how he talks to you." Audrey's eyes welled up, but she took a deep breath so he wouldn't notice. "Me neither, my love." The days passed, each heavier than the last. Charles immersed himself in work. He didn't ask how Audrey was, what she felt, or even if the pregnancy was going well. It was as if the baby didn't exist, and although she tried to stay strong for Leo, there were nights when she simply lay awake in bed, wondering how she had reached this point. Remembering the Charles she met when they were just students, the man who dreamed of owning his own business, who laughed with her about anything. Where had that person gone? The weekend arrived, and Charles forced her to accompany him to a formal gala dinner at a luxurious hotel in Midtown. Audrey didn't want to go, but she had no choice. He always said her presence was part of his image. "Dress well, no long faces," he told her before they left. "Don't let anyone notice how miserable you feel." Audrey gritted her teeth and didn't answer. She put on a long, dark blue dress, applied minimal makeup, and walked out with him as if everything were fine. The gala was like all the others. People with expensive wine glasses, fake conversations, and empty smiles. Charles moved from group to group, shaking hands, laughing as if nothing were wrong. Audrey could barely breathe. Halfway through the event, she went out onto the balcony for air. The cool wind brought some relief. She closed her eyes and thought for a second she could stay there forever, away from the noise, the stairs, everything. But she heard footsteps behind her. Charles. "What are you doing out here?" he said, serious. "People are asking about you. Do you think it's nice to disappear like that?" "I just needed a little air," she replied, without looking at him. He stepped closer and grabbed her arm tightly. "You're making a fool of me, Audrey. Let go of me, Charles. You're making a scene." She tried to pull away, and in that instant, he did something she never thought he would. He slapped her. The sound boomed like an explosion on the terrace. For a second, everything stopped. Audrey stood still, her face burning. When she looked up, she saw several people inside the ballroom staring at them, and among them all, one gaze froze her completely. Her son. He was there. She didn't know how or when he had arrived. She only knew he had seen her. His small eyes were wide open, his body trembling, as if he didn't understand what he had just witnessed. Audrey didn't feel the blow on her cheek as much as she felt the stab in her heart, seeing her son in shock, and she knew without a doubt that there was no turning back. 3. The battle for dignity begins, a moment that changes everything. What would you have done after witnessing such a horrifying event? Share your thoughts on Audrey's next steps in the comments. Remember to like this video and subscribe to see how this story unfolds. Audrey didn't know how long she stayed there, her cheek burning and her heart shattered. The murmur of the guests began to fill the room. Some covered their mouths with their hands, others simply watched in silence, incredulous. And in the middle of it all, Leo was still there, completely motionless. Charles, for the first time, seemed nervous. He looked around, realizing that his blow hadn't been in private. Everyone had seen it. He had lost control, and he couldn't hide it. Audrey took a step back, moving away from him. "Don't you ever touch me again," she said in a low, firm voice. Charles tried to say something, but his voice was choked by the tension in the air. One of the evening's most important guests, an older businessman named Mr. Thomas Knight, approached. He was a serious man, respected in the American financial world. "Charles, I think it's best if you leave," he said bluntly. "This is a personal matter," Charles retorted, trying to regain his composure. It stopped being personal the moment you hit her in front of everyone. Mr. Knight looked at Audrey with compassion. Are you all right? Audrey could only nod, though she felt like she was crumbling inside. Several attendees approached. Some women offered her tissues. Others simply hugged her without saying anything. She had never felt so vulnerable. And, at the same time, she had never felt so determined. Charles turned and left the ballroom amidst whispers and cold stares. Audrey didn't follow him. Leo was still by the entrance, pale as paper. Audrey knelt in front of him. "My love, are you okay?" Leo nodded, but his eyes were full of contained tears. "Does it hurt?" he asked, gently touching his mother's cheek. "A little, but it will pass." "I don't want to go home, Mommy," he whispered. Audrey hugged him tightly, feeling those words pierce her soul. "We are not going back, I promise you." That night, with the help of Mr. Knight, Audrey and Leo went to a discreet hotel on the outskirts of New York. They carried nothing but the clothes on their backs. Her heart was racing, but at least, for the first time in a long time, she felt she had taken a step. In the hotel room, while Leo slept, deeply clutching his teddy bear, Audrey sat on the edge of the bed and picked up the phone. She didn't know who to call. She had no friends. Charles had made sure she distanced herself from everyone. But then she thought of someone. Sarah, an old college friend. They hadn't spoken in years, but Audrey remembered her as a good person. She took a deep breath and dialed the number. "Audrey?" A somewhat confused voice answered. "Sarah, I'm sorry to call you so suddenly. I need help." She didn't have to say more. Sarah listened without interrupting, and when Audrey finished, there was a moment of silence. "Where are you?" Sarah asked, her tone firm. "Tell me, and I'll come get you." Audrey broke down crying. "Thank you, truly." The next morning, Sarah arrived at the hotel with clean clothes, food, and a look full of concern. She didn't ask too many questions. She simply hugged Audrey tightly and stroked Leo's head. "You are not alone," she told her. Audrey didn't know how to thank her. Sarah took them to her home in the suburbs of Seattle, a quiet place with spacious gardens and clean air. It was exactly what they needed. During the first few days, Audrey barely spoke. She just focused on caring for Leo and crying secretly at night. But Sarah was patient. She made her tea, kept her company in silence, and gave her space. Almost a week passed before Audrey dared to tell her everything. The control, the contempt, the times he made her feel like a burden, the shouting, the loneliness, and finally, the slap. "I saw it in his eyes that night," Audrey said, looking at the sunset from the window. "He wasn't remorseful. He was just worried that he had been seen." Sarah didn't answer immediately. She just put a hand on her shoulder. "Then you cannot go back, not for a second." "I'm not going back," Audrey affirmed. "But I don't know how to start over. He controls everything. I have no money, no home, no job, and I'm pregnant." Sarah frowned. "How many weeks along are you?" "Just a few." "And I found out a few days ago." "Then it's now or never. You have to protect that baby, Leo, and yourself. No more silence, Audrey." Audrey felt her body tremble, but no longer from fear. It was from the strength beginning to awaken within her. That very day, Sarah helped her contact a lawyer specializing in domestic violence. Her name was Carmen Hayes, and from the first moment, she inspired confidence. She had a calm but firm voice and a look that said, "You are going to get through this." "The first thing we're going to do is file for a restraining order," she explained. "But for that, you have to be prepared. This won't be easy, Audrey. He will fight dirty." Audrey gritted her teeth. "I don't care. Let him try whatever he wants. I won't let him hurt us again." And so, a new stage began. A stage of fear, yes, but also of courage. Because for the first time in years, Audrey was choosing herself. 4. The media counteroffensive. For those reading the comments, type the word justice in the comment section. Only those who made it this far will understand. Let's continue the story. The following days were like walking through a minefield. Every step Audrey took was filled with doubt, fear, and questions. But there was also something new inside her: determination. Carmen, the lawyer, was clear from the start. She explained that while the complaint and the restraining order might seem like huge steps, they were only the beginning. Charles had power, influence, and contacts everywhere, and he wouldn't stand idly by. He will try to manipulate the story, she warned. He will surely talk to the press. He'll want to make you look like the villain. You have to be ready. Audrey took a deep breath. I don't care what he invents. I know what I lived through, and I'm not going to be silent anymore. And indeed, the media attacks came. Within a few days, several news outlets began publishing suspiciously aligned articles. Recognized executive faces difficult situation with pregnant wife. Personal conflicts affect private life of successful Manhattan businessman. None mentioned the slap. None talked about the fear, the shouting, the control. They only talked about a family crisis. Audrey expected it. Carmen did too. That's why they were prepared. They collected text messages where Charles humiliated her, emails with harsh orders, audio recordings of arguments, old photos of bruises that she, without knowing why, had saved on her phone. Carmen put together a solid file. This is what we're going to use, she said. Justice is slow, but it's not blind. And even if he has money, he can't buy everything. They also had Leo's testimony. Carmen was very careful. They didn't force him. They just asked him if he wanted to talk about how he felt. And Leo, with his soft voice, just said, I saw my dad hit my mom, and I don't want that to happen again. That was enough. One morning, while Audrey was helping Sarah fold laundry in the kitchen, her phone rang. It was a blocked number. She hesitated to answer, but she did. Audrey? The voice chilled her blood. Charles, I need to talk to you. This can't continue. You're destroying everything. Are you calling because you're sorry? She asked with irony. Don't play games with me, he retorted aggressively. I'm willing to forget everything if you come back. You can stay in the house with Leo, even with your pregnancy. But this has to stop. Audrey felt a mixture of fury and laughter. Are you offering to take me back as if I were a prize? I'm trying to fix things. You have nothing without me. No accounts, no job. No way to support yourself. I am your only option. You're wrong, she said calmly. I'm not afraid of you anymore. And she hung up. She stood there trembling, tears in her eyes. Not from sadness, but from rage. Sarah came over and hugged her without saying a word. That night, as Leo put on his pajamas, he approached his mother with his teddy bear in his arms. Mommy, if you're sad, I'm sad too. Audrey knelt in front of him, hugged him gently, and stroked his hair. I'm not sad anymore, my love. I'm strong, and that's different. Leo rested his head on her shoulder. Will we be together forever? Audrey felt a lump in her throat. Yes, my darling. No matter what happens, we will always be together. And I will protect you from everything. Leo hugged her tighter. Even from Daddy. She didn't know what to answer immediately. She closed her eyes, took a deep breath, and said softly, From everything and Everine, I promise you. The next day, Carmen organized an urgent meeting with a criminal lawyer and a child therapist. They knew Charles wouldn't stop. They had to protect Leo on all fronts. He's going to try to ask for custody, Carmen said, and he'll use everything he can against you, from your financial situation to your emotional stability. He'll paint you as an unstable mother, and he'll do it with a smile on his face. What do I do? Audrey asked. Her soul was a sea of confusion. Prove who he really is. You are not alone. We will fight with everything. Carmen gave her a list. She had to organize her documents, open a bank account in her name, start working, even if it was something simple, and gather any witnesses who could speak about Charles's true behavior. They also had to present evidence of the isolation, the control, how he had left her without resources. That night, when Leo was asleep, Audrey and Sarah sat in the living room with hot tea. The silence of the house was comforting, but heavy. "I never imagined being in this," Audrey said suddenly. "All my life I took care of myself. I was a good wife, a good mother, and this is how I ended up?" "No, Audrey," Sarah told her. "This is how you are beginning. What you lived through was not your fault, and what is coming is what you are going to build." Audrey smiled, her eyes misty. It was true. For the first time in a long time, she had the opportunity to start from scratch. And she wasn't going to waste it. A few days later, Carmen called her, her voice firm. "We have a date. Preliminary hearing in 2 weeks. I need you to be ready." Audrey closed her eyes. 2 weeks, 14 days, to prepare to face him head on. Not as his wife, not as his victim, but as the woman who would no longer be trampled upon. And as she prepared mentally with the support of Sarah, Carmen, and little Leo, who smiled every time she made him breakfast, she knew she couldn't lose. Not this time. She owed it to Leo. She owed it to the baby. And above all, she owed it to herself. The first assault in the courtroom. The battle for freedom begins. How do you think Audrey will fare in court against Charles's power? Share your predictions in the comments, and remember to like and subscribe for the final chapters. Time flew, and at the same time, dragged. Every day was a mix of anxiety and hope. Audrey woke up early, made Leo breakfast, reviewed documents, talked on the phone with Carmen, and tried not to think too much about what was coming. But there was always a moment, however small, when fear crept in uninvited. She knew Charles wouldn't stay quiet. It was confirmed one morning when she received a message from a blocked number. "You don't know who you're messing with. You're going to regret this." Audrey took a screenshot and sent it to Carmen. She didn't reply to the message. She didn't react. She wasn't going to play that game anymore. But she couldn't stop her hands from shaking. Carmen replied instantly. "Save everything. Every threat. Every attempt at contact. We are going to use it. And you are not alone." But even so, the fear was real. That same night, Audrey woke up sweating. She had dreamed that Charles appeared at the door, shouting her name, taking Leo away. She got up and went to the boy's room. She found him asleep, hugging his teddy bear. She sat beside him and stroked him until her heart rate calmed down. "You are not going to touch him," she thought, "ever again." The days before the hearing were exhausting. Carmen prepared her for everything. What to say, how to say it, how to remain calm if Charles tried to provoke her. They also talked to the child therapist, who evaluated Leo and prepared a report confirming that the child showed signs of stress, fear, and excessive attachment to his mother. It was another key piece. "You are not harming him by reporting this," the therapist told Audrey. "You would harm him if you stayed silent. This process will be difficult, but it's the only way to break the cycle." Sarah, as always, was present. Every time Audrey broke down, she reminded her how far she had come, that she was no longer the woman who endured in silence. And the day arrived. The hearing was at the family court in Seattle. The building was not imposing, but the atmosphere was tense. Audrey arrived with Carmen. Charles was already there, surrounded by his lawyers, dressed in his best suit, and with that habitual expression of arrogance, as if he already knew he was going to win. When he saw her, he smirked, but she didn't return his gaze. She kept walking with her head held high. She was nervous, yes, but she also felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Dignity. The hearing was not public. Only the involved parties were present. The judge, a serious-faced but fair man, opened the file and began to review the facts. Carmen was the first to speak. She presented the case clearly, showing the evidence, the messages, the photos, the therapist's report, Audrey's testimony. Charles squirmed in his seat, growing more tense with each piece of evidence. When it was his turn, his lawyer tried to shift the narrative. He said Audrey was unbalanced, that she wanted to alienate the child for revenge, that she herself had distanced herself from her friends and family. Audrey took a deep breath. She expected those lies. She had heard them many times. And then, the judge gave her the floor. She stood up. Her voice trembled at first, but as she spoke, she found her strength. I didn't come here for revenge. I came to protect my son and my baby. I came because I want my children to grow up knowing what respect is, not fear. Because I will not be silent anymore. The judge nodded, took notes, and called a recess. The atmosphere became dense. In the hallway, as they waited to return to the room, Charles approached. Carmen tried to interpose herself, but he spoke directly. This is not over, Audrey. You'll see what it's like to fight me. Audrey looked at him for the first time in weeks, and she didn't tremble. I don't care how long it takes. I already won, because I'm not afraid of you anymore. Charles clenched his jaw, but said nothing more. He turned and left. Upon returning, the judge did not issue a final judgment, but did issue preliminary measures. Charles could not approach Audrey or Leo. Visits would be supervised if the judge authorized them later. Audrey left protected. It wasn't the final victory, but it was a victory. And as she left the courthouse with Carmen and Sarah, she felt something new. Relief. You did it, Sarah said, hugging her. You stood up to him. And it wasn't easy. But it was necessary, Audrey replied. That night, upon arriving home, Leo ran into her arms. Audrey hugged him and lifted him off the ground, laughing with a mixture of exhaustion and joy. Did you win, Mommy? She looked into his eyes. We won, my love. All three of us. And for the first time in a long time, she said it with certainty. 6. Epilogue. A Life with Wings. Another inside joke for those just checking the comments. Type freedom fries. Those who made it this far will understand the joke. The days after the hearing felt strange. Audrey had won a small respite, but not the complete battle. She slept better, but not fully. She ate more calmly, but always with a knot in her stomach. The restraining order was in effect, and Charles, at least outwardly, had disappeared. But Audrey knew he wouldn't stay quiet. It was confirmed one afternoon. Sarah came home with a serious expression, carrying the newspaper under her arm. They published an interview with him, she said, placing the paper on the table. He's saying you left him without reason, that you're depriving him of seeing his son, that the whole thing is a misunderstanding. Audrey took it in her hands. There was Charles's face on the front page, well-groomed, serious gaze, with a headline that read, "A father destroyed by a lie." Her chest burned, not because of the lies, but because of how well he could manage his image. It had always been like that. He knew what to say, how to say it. He knew which mask to wear depending on the audience, and now he was using the media to paint himself as the victim. Carmen called minutes later. I saw the interview. Don't respond. Don't make statements. This is part of his strategy. He wants to pressure you publicly because he can no longer touch you legally. What if people believe him? Audrey asked, feeling the lump in her throat. It doesn't matter. What matters is what the judge sees. And so far, you're doing perfectly. Hold on a little longer. Audrey hung up and looked out the window. Outside, Leo was playing in the garden. Happy, carefree. His laughter filled the air. That was what mattered. That was what she was defending. That same evening, while reading him a bedtime story, Leo asked an unexpected question. Will Daddy ever come back? Audrey swallowed. Maybe at some point you can see him, but with someone else present. And only if he learns to behave. Then he won't live with us ever again? Audrey looked into his eyes. No, my love. He will never live with us again. But that's not a bad thing. We are going to be okay. Leo nodded and snuggled against her. Audrey hugged him tighter. She felt her heart break, but also fill up. They were together. And that was enough for now. Carmen, the lawyer, warned her that Charles would try to counterattack through the legal system. And she was right. A week later, a notification arrived. Charles was requesting joint custody. He argued he had the right to be in his son's life, that Audrey was alienating him without reason, and that his company was being affected by this whole scandal. Audrey felt her blood pressure drop. It can't be, she whispered. After all this? Carmen took a deep breath as she read the documents. He can try, but he won't win easily. We're going to respond. We're going to prove everything we have that this is his last attempt to regain control. Audrey felt herself return to war. Again, preparing documents. Again, coordinating testimonies. Again, lining up witnesses. Gathering evidence. During those weeks, Sarah became an irreplaceable pillar. She took Leo to the park, helped him with homework, cooked when Audrey couldn't even boil water. Every night before bed, Audrey sat with her notebook and wrote down what she felt. It was a kind of diary, something that helped her release everything she didn't say aloud. She wrote things like, I can't let him win. I can't let my son believe this is normal. I have to be strong, even if I sometimes want to give up. And so, time passed until the second hearing arrived. This time, it was for custody. Everything was at stake. Charles arrived at the courthouse with the same arrogance as always. He greeted his lawyers, smiled at the press waiting outside. He looked like an actor going to a premiere. Audrey, on the other hand, entered without makeup, face washed, with a folder of papers under her arm, and Carmen's hand gripping hers. In the room, the atmosphere was cold. The judge reviewed both files. Carmen presented every piece of evidence in detail. The threats, the history of violence, the psychological evaluations. She showed Leo's therapist's report and presented a letter of support signed by the boy's pediatrician, confirming episodes of childhood anxiety since witnessing the abuse. Charles's lawyer did what everyone expected. He attacked. He said Audrey had manipulated the child, that she was using him as a weapon, that she was emotionally unstable, that she had no income, that she couldn't guarantee Leo a quality life. Your Honor, Carmen said, her voice firm, having money does not make anyone a good father, and not having it does not make anyone a bad mother. What matters is the environment, emotional stability, love, and in this room, it is evident who has all of that to offer Leo. Audrey took a deep breath. She felt her heart was going to explode, but she was there, standing up, facing him. The judge did not issue his ruling that same day. He said he would announce it in 3 days. They were the 3 longest days of her life. She spent the hours on autopilot. She played with Leo, but her mind was elsewhere. She couldn't sleep or eat well. She just waited, and the moment arrived. Carmen's call came early in the morning. Audrey answered, trembling. You won, the lawyer said on the other end. Full custody, no visits for now, and a mandatory review in 6 months. Until then, he cannot approach you. Audrey didn't respond. She simply broke down crying, a cry contained for weeks, for months, for years. Sarah hugged her tightly, and Leo, seeing her emotional, ran to hug her too. What's wrong, Mommy? She looked at him with tears in her eyes and smiled. We are going to be okay. Truly we are, my love. That night, Audrey wrote a single sentence in her diary. I am not afraid, and she wrote it with conviction. The days passed, and something inside Audrey began to change. She no longer woke up with a knot in her chest. She no longer checked her phone every 5 minutes expecting threats. She no longer lived waiting for the next attack. It wasn't that the fear had completely disappeared, but it no longer commanded her. It no longer dominated her. For the first time in a long time, Audrey could breathe. The news of the ruling in her favor leaked to the press, and although Charles tried to counter it with more false statements, this time it didn't have the same effect. The scandal no longer favored him. Several people who once feared him began to speak out. A secretary, a former partner, even a woman who had been engaged to him before he met Audrey. The truth began to surface, and when the truth shows its face, no power or money can stop it. Charles was not arrested, but his image was forever tarnished. He lost investors, contracts, and a part of the respect he so jealously guarded. And although that didn't erase what Audrey had suffered, it was a start of justice. Meanwhile, she began to feel alive again. With the help of Sarah and Carmen, she started looking for work. It wasn't easy, of course. She had been out of the job market for years, but she had a career in interior design and good taste, so she decided to try it on her own. She designed a simple website, did some free designs for friends, and little by little, the name Audrey Vance, Spaces with Soul, began to circulate in the small local circle. Someone asked her for help with an apartment, then another with an office, and without realizing it, she already had 2 projects a month. She wasn't making a fortune, but it was hers. It was honest, and most importantly, it was enough. One afternoon, after dropping Leo off at a music class, she sat in a cafe facing the sea. She had a notebook in her hands, the same one where she had written so many times with fear, with rage, with desperation. That day, she wrote just 3 words. I am so starting over. She looked toward the coast, the wind tousling her hair, and for the first time, she didn't think about what she had lost. She thought about what she had gained. Freedom. Leo was also a different child. He slept better. He ate better. He was no longer scared when someone raised their voice, and every time Audrey told him, I love you, he replied without hesitation, Me too, Mommy. Always. The baby grew strong in her belly. In the ultrasounds, everything was perfect. It was a girl, and she already had a name. Sophia. Leo had suggested it because he said Sophia sounded clean, beautiful, like the sky when there are no clouds. Audrey didn't have much, but she had the essential things. A modest home, a happy son, a baby on the way, and a friend like Sarah, who had been her rock in the darkest moments. Sometimes they sat together, drinking coffee, laughing, recalling everything they had been through. Do you realize you walked out of there? Sarah said one night, that you did it yourself, with your own steps. Audrey nodded with a slight smile. And if they wrote it as a story, no one would believe it. But it's real, and you are the proof. And she was right. The day Sophia was born, Audrey cried like never before, not from pain, but from emotion. She held a new life in her arms, one that would never know fear or shouting or the heavy silence of a broken home. Sophia arrived quietly, with the sweetness of one who knows she is awaited. And when Leo met her for the first time, he leaned in, kissed her forehead, and said, Hello, little sister. Don't worry. I'm going to take care of you. Audrey looked at them, and she knew she had triumphed. The storm had been long, strong, relentless, but not infinite. And now another stage was beginning, one where love didn't hurt, where hugs didn't hide scars, where happiness wasn't a mask, but a real state. A life with scars, yes, but also with wings. And in that new beginning, as Leo laughed, Sophia slept, and the sun slowly set among the clouds of Seattle, Audrey wrote one final sentence in her notebook. I will never again be less than I deserve. If you enjoyed this story and its message moved you, please like the video, subscribe, and leave us your comments. Your support is invaluable for continuing to share stories. Tell us what score you give this story from 1 to 100 in the comments. Comment now.